What is good, Tesla family? It's Ray J back with another video, and in this one I'm going to be talking about the one and only Tesla stock and break down what's going on with the overall share price, what you should be watching for next week, as it's going to be an absolutely massive week for the markets. I'm also going to break down what's going on with the data that will affect Tesla in the markets and everything you need to know for next week. Now, before I break anything down, before I get into any more details, I do have to mention a couple of things before starting. Firstly, I'm not a financial planner. Take none of this as financial advice whatsoever. And also, if you guys can, please smash the like button if you want to see more videos like this. It not only benefits me, it benefits the entire Tesla community as a whole. And the last thing is, if you guys can, please check out the Moomoo link down below and in the description. If you sign up for Moomoo, the link down below, and deposit $100 into the account, you're guaranteed 10 free stocks. If you deposit $1,000, you're guaranteed 20 free stocks plus the chance to win $60,000. It's a limited time offer. The offer ends in a week. Check it out before they run out. With that out of the way, let's get on with the video. So looking at Tesla, this thing was up about 3.23% for the day. We finally got the bounce I was hoping for. However, I did mention that the way Tesla is going to move starting from yesterday would depend on the data coming out. And we know that PPI was a little bit higher than expected. That's not a very good sign for CPI. So it makes me very concerned. Now, I want to note that when it comes to the markets, things are actually taking a big turn in terms of the treasury yields and the VIX, and everything's looking very bearish, at least for the future. However, before the big drop comes, which I think it most likely will, before it comes, there is still hope for the market to hold up just for a little bit longer before the big drop. And I'm going to show you exactly why. So, looking at the market, I wanted to note that we tend to make massive moves depending on things like Jerome Powell, what he says, what happens during the FOMC meetings. I'll give you one example. Back when the market was coming down like this, right, when the market failed to break past 402, we came tumbling down to about 393. Many people would have thought that the market was about to crash, this and that, and I'm sure it makes a lot of sense. But then we got this massive pump, and this all happened in one day after Jerome Powell was speaking, and he gave some very, I wouldn't necessarily say his words were super like dovish or hawkish. Some of the things he said were pretty hawkish, but the market loved the fact that he said that a soft landing is still possible. And I personally disagree with that, but it is what it is. Jerome Powell says things and the market moves super hard. So the first thing to remember is CPI is coming out tomorrow, not tomorrow, next week on Tuesday. And then we also have on Wednesday the CPI meeting. And finally, we have quad witching for Friday, which means we have some massive options expirations coming up. So, in essence, things are looking pretty crazy for next week. I expect some crazy volatility. And there are two main things I'm watching for. If you look at the overall trend on SPY, you will notice that right here, we tend to get rejected off the resistance level of this broadening descending wedge. We come down, we have a bounce before the big drop. Second rejection, back in March. Big rejection of resistance, big drop, bounce, then the next crash came. Right here, back in August, rejected off resistance, big drop, bounce, next crash came. And finally, where are we right now? Zooming out, just to remind everyone, we have this overall formation. The resistance line is right there. We got the huge rejection already. We came down and we actually got a small bounce off that 391 support. The real question is, could the bounce continue before the big crash, or do we just crash from here? I believe it's going to be heavily dependent on CPI and also dependent on the FOMC meeting. If the market does get a big bounce, let's just say CPI is actually lower than expected and the Fed is suddenly like more dovish, for example, just hypothetically, the market still has some hope to push up one last time before the big drop comes, in my opinion. However, given how the VIX is looking like it already bottomed, and given the fact that there are other indicators out there all suggesting that 410 was the top, I don't think this next potential rally would be that big. I'm not really even guaranteeing it will happen. I'm just trying to remind everyone that if it does happen, do not get your hopes up. The market will likely see another big rejection, as history tells us that. We have other indications of that. Let me just talk about the US Treasury yield, the 10-year first, and I'm going to break down the VIX and other things before I get on with Tesla. Look at the 10-year Treasury yield. All right, what do we notice here? Notice how when the market was, when it had the big rally from that like June period up until like August, what was this thing doing? It was tumbling down very hard. The stock market was rallying going into August. So was Tesla during this time. Then all of a sudden, what happened between, I would say, near the end of August up until close to November? The market had this big, big, big rally as we got closer to December. But notice how this tends to be an early indicator, because if I put this next to SPY, and believe me, SPY has a tendency of reflecting what happens to the market, which will affect Tesla. That's why I'm talking about this. SPY on the daily has a very interesting trend here. We'll start off with like August. SPY's peak during the rally was August 16th. 2 weeks before that, or maybe a week before that, a week to week and a half, we saw the 10-year treasury yield flip directions and it started pushing up. And then the stock market was getting ready to crash. This was like a leading indicator. It happened a week to 2 weeks before. Then what happened? The stock market was clearly crashing and crashing and crashing. Then finally, on the 21st of October, the 10-year ended up finding its peak and reversing. What happened around August? This is October 21st is when this happened. The market already came down around October 13th or so. It was still trading kind of sideways. And by the 21st, the market started rallying. So this is usually a sign of the exact moments the market's likely going to make a big reversal, or sometimes it's a little bit ahead because we start to see more investments being made into the treasuries, the bonds. So what I'm essentially seeing, guys, is the stock market has been trading kind of sideways, but because this is getting ready to bounce, it looks like a big drop is coming very soon. This could be like within 2 weeks or maybe as soon as next week, in my opinion. And I do believe that if there is one last rally because of CPI and FOMC, maybe even like quad witching, I wouldn't be too excited because I know what's most likely going to come, and that is a big drop in the market. The next bear rally is starting very soon, in my opinion, and I want everyone to be prepared for that. It's going to affect Tesla too. You know, the earnings recession is coming. It's going to be very tough in 2023. The real effects of 2020 are now about to show because the Fed had to raise rates. The true effects of those rates as a result of all the money that was printed and all of this quantitative easing and all the stimulus, it's just about to show. The real rate hike effects are showing in 2023. So, anyways, looking at the VIX, this is another very key indicator. This is also looking like it's going to start pushing up relatively soon. Before I talk about that, let's look at the dollar index first. On this screen right here, you guys could see, zooming out, the dollar index, big push up as the market was not doing the best. Right here, we got to bounce off the support zone around, this was like around near the middle of August. We finally got a big bounce, and this is when the market started crashing. Then this came down, the market started pumping, and now it looks like it's right around this key demand area, and this is where it's going to likely start bouncing relatively soon, which is a bearish indication for the markets. It's once again correlated with these yields. So what I'm essentially seeing is that being correlated with the VIX, and let me put this back on my one screen. On the VIX, on the daily, it's also not looking the best for the bulls because on the VIX, this thing is starting to bounce. It looks like it wants to continue going. It might shop a bit right here because previous support becomes resistance. We see the fact that we have some resistance very close to this 22 to 23 zone. I do think we might kind of chop a little bit because the market still has some, maybe a small amount of hope for a small rally next week because of CPI. But after that, it does not matter. Within the next week and a half, I wouldn't be surprised if this thing starts pushing up, continuing to go up and approaching this $27 level of resistance, maybe breaking past that and seeing the 30s if the market continues to drop by the start of next year. That's very, very possible for this to start pushing up and up and up as the market starts to come down. So there are many indicators out there suggesting the stock market's about to take a big hit and the next crash is starting very soon. Like I said before, it's important to note this. Now, when you consider how the market tends to essentially move, historically, this tends to affect Tesla big time And there's never or rarely ever been an instance where the market starts crashing and then Tesla just continues to rally very hard. It's very unlikely that will happen. I do believe there's some hope for Tesla to push up a bit more, being that oversold, or as oversold as it was because of CPI. But until then, like I said, a technical balance will only do so much during times like these, as Tesla has been showing lots of relative weakness compared to how strong it was back, even like during June when the market was coming down, even back during other hard times. Tesla was actually stronger than how strong it is right now. This is a sign that Tesla's not going to do too well, guys. So I want everyone to be prepared. What am I seeing on Tesla? Obviously, I was hoping that this whole like inverse head and shoulders formation would play out. So far, it has not played out. There is a little bit of hope for Tesla to continue pushing going into next week, but where it goes on Tuesday and Wednesday, it's going to depend very heavily on the data. What I'm essentially seeing on Tesla is we have some pretty decent price action, but as the market began to bleed, we saw Tesla come down with it, which shows that Tesla is still not extremely strong or independent. There is a little bit of hope for Tesla to continue pushing to this like 185 area. I mean, we could even break a little bit above that, but after that, I'd still be very careful. This thing is likely going to start chopping, and once the market starts to reverse and it really starts to come down, and by reverse, I mean reverse from the upper trend that we saw previously. Once the bear rally starts, Tesla will likely be dragged down, and it is going to likely see new lows, in my opinion. Now, the most bullish possibility on Tesla, even though this is very unlikely, you could argue that Tesla's trying to form this like giant inverse head and shoulders, and this thing is about to like see one last huge pump to this like 194 level. I'm not saying that's going to happen. I'm just saying it is a possibility, even though it's quite unlikely. My target for Tesla is perhaps if it breaks past this 180 resistance and then 183, we could see this thing at 185 to 187 at the highest. But then if the market pumps very hard, maybe a little bit higher, that's where this like possibility comes in. But other than that, I'm still going to be more bearish going into like the end of this year, not to mention 2023, the start of it. I do believe the next big drop is coming, and this will drag Tesla down, as I mentioned previously. Now, from a bigger standpoint, I must note that Tesla's low for the past year was about $166 a share, and we are going to likely see it break that going into next year, in my honest opinion. I know it's very unfortunate for people to hear that, but until then, there is still some room for upside, a little bit of room left. I still believe Tesla could do it. But like I said, be prepared because new lows could still come pretty quickly given everything that's going on. Seeing demand slow down for these cars, seeing demand slow down all over the world for many assets and many other big things. I'm still going to be very cautious with Tesla. I want to thank everyone for listening now. I know that it's very hard for lots of Tesla investors. It's also hard for people investing in other great companies out there. But just remember, this is a very big opportunity for the long term future. Firstly, as Tesla drops, very good opportunity to play the charts if you want, and also to start dollar cost averaging down. Because in the long term, once the market starts to recover, which could actually happen during like mid 2023 or even a little bit later, I do believe when the big recovery comes, Tesla's going to make a crazy comeback. This thing will break all time highs again, and the returns to be made are going to be absolutely glorious. So please remain calm, cool, and collected. Do not let your emotions get the best of you, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Tesla to the moon because the long term future is still incredibly bright, and peace out.